Welcome to Wayward Writers. I'm Senior Literary Agent and author Heather Cashman.
I'm author and writing coach Stephanie Bearce.
And I'm author and writing coach Nicki Jacobsmeyer.
Our mission is to nurture and enrich established writers throughout their publishing journeys.
We welcome all genres, age groups, and publishing paths through video podcasts, online webinars, in-person retreats, and more.
We're here to help you conquer your path.
Welcome to Wayward Writers. I'm Heather Cashman, here with my co-hosts Nicki Jacobsmeyer and Stephanie Bearce. And today we are so excited to be joined by Chloe Ito Ward. Thank you for coming, Chloe.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
We're going to talk about her newest book and a couple other books, and how her teaching background influences her storytelling and some of the different themes that weave through her body of work. So, Nicki, would you tell us more about Chloe?
Yes, I'd love to. Chloe Ito Ward is a Japanese-American children's author. Also a former curriculum director, she has a Master of Education degree in curriculum and instruction and has spent the last decade teaching kindergarten, where she discovered her passion for picture books. Chloe is the author of Love Grows Here, 2024, Made for More, 2025, and forthcoming books, Chopsticks Are, 2026, All the Ways We Learn, also in 2026, and in 2027, My Brain is an Ocean and Yuki's Special Delivery. You've been busy. I love it. When Chloe isn't rock climbing, you can find her exploring the big slippery rock on Kalapaki Beach with her husband, son, and their imaginary dog, Miso. Welcome, Chloe. We're so excited to hear about your books and your background and you as a creator. So thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
So why don't we start with your forthcoming book, All the Ways We Learn? What inspired this story and why was it so important for you to highlight different ways children learn?
Sure. So I was inspired to write this story because of my own experiences in the classroom, both as a teacher, but also as a child. So I thought back to when I was in elementary school and the things that I struggled with. And that is where this story was born, is from those memories. And other than that, it actually started solely as a book about a main character that struggles with ADHD in the classroom. But the publisher asked that I expand the story and make it a little more inclusive. And so we went from there. The editor, Nicole, really helped me format the book and figure out how to make it as inclusive as possible and showcasing more than just ADHD.
That's great.
That's great. I'm sure as an educator, you've experienced kids learning in all sorts of different ways. I know I have a teaching background too, and it really adds a lot to your writing, I think. How have those classroom experiences helped shape the voice of this book for you?
So when I was writing All the Ways We Learned, I thought about what worked in the classroom for me and what also worked for the kids. So I thought a lot about how kids love to lay on their stomachs when they're learning and be super cozy and comfortable. And that's how I wanted the book to feel, almost like a cozy, warm hug.
Oh, I can't wait to read it.
Love
Where
that.
I want to know.
It's really
I
lovely.
think it's so true. Not everybody is comfortable just sitting in the desk and learning. I love that you realize that. I'm sure the students in your classroom have appreciated that too. Yeah.
It also made, as I was watching it be developed and I was thinking about it, it made me think about myself as a kid and think, if someone had let me not be in a desk, like what more could I have done, or how much better would my school experience have been? Because I was so big as a kid. I was 5 feet tall in kindergarten. And so I was probably as big as Chloe in kindergarten. And so I was as big as my own teacher. And I was in this giant desk at the back of the room, and all the other kids had their own little tiny desks. And it was like very separating for me.
Yeah.
And I think that if we had been in some more inclusive settings and I had been treated more inclusively, I think it's how this book affected me. I think there's a lot of different takeaways, even though it's specifically geared toward different types of learning. Like, it has that same thematic, let's let people be themselves. And how can we help people be themselves in these environments? And so, anyway, what takeaway were you hoping that families and teachers would carry with them after reading?
I really hope that parents and teachers see either themselves or their children in the story and understand that people learn differently, and that's okay. As a young teacher, I was taught that listening looked a certain way, kids sitting on the carpet, being still and being quiet. And so when I first started teaching, I really tried to do that. And it worked for some kids, but not all kids. And I remember there was this one time a teacher came into my classroom, a teacher friend, and she was like, I can never find you because you're never sitting at your desk. And for me, that was like an aha moment. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing that I'm asking all these 5-year-olds to sit and be still and try to be quiet and keep their eyes on me when I can't even do that? And I know that I struggle with that. Why am I not incorporating that more in the classroom? So I hope that parents and kids see that listening and learning looks different. It might be moving. I had a student one year, he stood the whole year. Like, this was before there was things like standing desks or flexible seating, but he just needed to stand. And so he just stood. He stood when when I was reading a story, he stood when he was writing at the table. Like, we lifted the table for him. And this was 10 years ago, where this really wasn't very like a popular thing that was happening. Yeah, I just want parents and kids to see that learning isn't that sort of traditional thing that we might think of, just sitting at the desk and everybody's quiet, and that's how you know they're learning, because nobody's talking and everybody's looking at you.
Or everybody's daydreaming.
That's
Yeah,
how you know they're
I know.
learning, because I love that.
yeah.
As an adult, if I'm quiet sometimes, right, that's not what's happening.
Exactly. And I thought of myself too. I was like, a lot of the time, if I'm sitting quietly and you're talking to me and I'm just staring at you, I'm thinking in my head, listen, I'm listening, like I'm paying attention. I'm listening to what this person is saying. And I'm not actually doing that because I'm so focused on trying to like make eye contact and listen that I'm not listening. I'm more focused on portraying that I'm listening. So that's really what I want parents and kids to know.
I love that.
That's
I
a
love
powerful message.
it is. And I love how all of your books, for one, I love that I get to work on your books with you. And for two, I just love how all of your books have these thematic elements that run through them that are so affirming and empowering. And they're born out of your own experience. And that's what I wanted to focus this whole episode on today, because I feel like that's a real gift that you have in your writing that I think is one of the reasons you're successful. And I hope that our listeners will get something out of that and be able to tap into their own experiences and hopefully use these for their own writing. All right, so let's look at this book. The first time I read it, I cried.
No.
I cried. It's called Made for More. It's sold to HarperCollins and it came out this year. And so then the second time I read it, I also cried. And I was like, I can't touch this book. I can't even edit it. Like, I have to just send it out because I'm afraid of messing it up. So, can you tell us what the seed idea is behind Made for More?
Sure. So I was scrolling social media, as all good writers do. You're supposed to be working, scrolling social media. And I came across this ad that was targeting Asian women, and it was a skin bleaching cream, essentially. And I was so mad. I was just like, what is this? It was, I think, 2021. I was like, here we are, it's 2021. This is still like selling and super popular. And like, I'm being targeted by this. And this is infuriating. And so I sent a message off to one of my friends and I made some offhanded comment basically ranting about this ad. And one of the lines that I put in there was skin like the moon. Like they want us to all be so pale. Like Asians need to be pale and have skin like the moon. And she was like, wait a minute, stop. That's a book. You should write that. And I was like, oh, wait, you're right. That is a book. And I should write that. And so that's where that idea came from. And that is something that I know a lot of Asian people, as well as actually many minorities, have experienced colorism. And so I just sat down and from start, this has only ever happened twice to me. I wish it would happen more often, but it doesn't. Where I just sat down and in 45 minutes, I wrote the book from start to finish, just was in my feelings and just put it out on paper. And the book stayed very similar to that first draft. Like I edited it and tweaked it for probably a month, which is very minimal for me. I could spend months to years editing the same book. Once I spent I think 2 weeks editing one sentence. So to like really power through a whole book in a month was shockingly fast for me. But yeah, that's where that came from. Just that social media post. And it just was like, yeah, this is something I have been really passionate about my whole life. I should write a book about this. So yeah, social media is not a waste of time.
It has its inspiration then, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's so great.
It
So,
is.
how do you take these big themes like empowerment and possibility and simplify it to words and images that resonate with these young readers?
So for me, I write what I'm feeling. I'm very feeling forward. And I also try to put my headspace back to whatever that character's age was. So what was important to me when I was 5, or what was I doing when I was 6? So like in Made for More, there's scenes where the main character is looking at tide pools, or she's surfing, or she's hiking, and she's expressing her feelings and thoughts during those times. And I just put myself when I was 5 or 6 and I was at the beach scouring the tide pools. What was I feeling? What was I thinking then? And I think that just relating to your character in that specific age of what was important to them, I think is really helpful.
It's so impressive that you remember what you were thinking then. I don't even know what ate yesterday. No, but I'm serious. I think that's such a gift that you can mind your own experiences to then infiltrate those into your words. And obviously your readers are feeling it. You're making people across the country, adults and children, cry, but in good, like good, powerful emotion you can identify with. It's remarkable.
Yeah.
This book sounds wonderful and really hits on a topic that affects both kids and adults. So, do you see this as a book that's equally for your adult readers and the kids, or how do you write to both audiences at once?
So I think it depends on the book. So my humorous stories, I think, are more geared to children than adults. And
I still laugh. What does that say to me about me?
you should. I
You're
hope you do.
You're a big kid, but
Yeah.
that's
I
aren't we
love
all big
them.
kids?
Yeah.
Yeah. But for me, like humor, I think is easier for me to gear towards children because children really love to laugh. The more social emotional books, I know, like for the most part, that can be a little harder to gear towards children because sometimes they're heavier topics. Like we're talking about colorism in the Asian community. Like that's a pretty heavy thing to talk to 5-year-olds about. So this for me is more like a family unit book. It's definitely something that you could read to a child and like just have it there, like the book speaks for itself, but you could also afterwards have a very in-depth conversation about Made for More and what that means. But when I think of the book in terms of having a child audience, my thought is like this is something that is going to affect children maybe for their whole lives. Like for me as a kid, especially a young girl, like I have been told my whole life what I should look like, whether that's my skin, the clothes that I wear, my body. Like that is happening since birth. Kids are being told that either through the media, family members' comments, kids at school. And so this is something that really affects them. And so that's what Made for More is really about. It is for kids so that if they hear things like that or that noise gets in their ear, that they can really stand up for themselves and say, no, that's not what I was made for. I was made for all these other things. And also, I think when I wrote this book, I was really concerned about kids in the ages of, I would say, between 10 and 18, when they're getting social media and they're seeing all these filtered images, things that are edited. And I wanted to give them the chance, like as a 5-year-old, before that huge influx rhetoric comes their way, to give them a strong foundation against that. And now, honestly, I'm even more concerned because with AI, like the ability
Oh,
to
yes.
like make fake people. And I saw an advertisement and it was like AI model was used. And so now it's not even that kids are seeing images of people where their skin color has been changed or their wrinkles have been erased or their moles or freckles are gone. Now it's just a totally imaginary person. So it's whatever that advertiser wants you to see, and it's not even really based in any sort of reality. So I think that's even more harmful. So now I'm even more concerned. But yeah, that's why I think it's so important for kids, right? Because this is their lives, this is going to affect them.
I love that you're starting young too. And I also think it's really wonderful that you have it. It's a book for a family or a book for multi-generational to talk about it. Just
Mhm.
out of curiosity, do you, like in the back of your book, do you ever put an author's note about that? Or do you,
Yes.
when you talk to kids, talk about it? Or
Yeah.
how do you handle that?
I'm sure Heather could chime in that I love an author's note.
Me
Love
too.
me.
I love it because I love to know the background behind it and everything. I love that.
Yeah. So I love to put an author's note. I love to put a little context in there so that kids and families can know like where I was writing from, a little bit about me and my history and my thoughts and like how this book connects. So I love to share that. I usually talk about it with kids if I'm doing like a read aloud. Sometimes I'm not currently teaching full time, but I still substitute either in kindergarten, sometimes in the library, and I will often read my book and do a lesson on it, and we'll talk about the author's note at the end. I'll usually read that after the story and we do a deep dive. And I think it's important to the kids, and it is also helpful for them because sometimes I do the whole like, this is my book, that means I wrote the words, this is the illustrator. And sometimes kids at the end, it's not until the very end when I read the author's note, they're like, wait a minute,
You
this is your book? Yes.
I think that's like with all the ages. I don't think it's just picture books. Middle grade and YA are like an adult. Oh, you wrote this? I think that's awesome. Is there a frequent question you get, Chloe?
That's a good question. I usually get a lot of questions about the illustrations. And that makes sense to me because kids are so visual.
Sure.
And I try to answer as much as possible. That is hard, obviously, because I'm not the illustrator. But I know a little bit about the process. And depending on the book, I do sometimes get like a peek behind the curtain of the process. And kids love to learn about that. They also ask me a lot how long it took. They want to know the time. How many
Yes.
how many hours?
How many minutes? Yeah.
Yeah, how many drafts? And when I start to talk about drafts, their minds are just explode.
Mhm. Yeah. Do adult minds when
Mhm.
you tell them how many.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
that's for sure.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think people think picture books are short, they're easy, you can just sit down and write it.
I try and tell people to think of them more as poetry
Mhm.
Mhm.
because they're hard. I don't write
Mhm.
them, but and there's a reason why.
Yeah.
Heather.
I think the really great thing about Made for More is that the theme of this book is so universal that it does resonate. It resonates with adults, it resonates with kids, it resonates with families. And that's really important. When you're writing picture books, it can be, yeah, of course, we want to focus on the kid and we do want to give these messages to the kids, but there are times when I think adults need these messages just as much as kids do. And it's so good for parents to I'm sure your mom felt the same things, Chloe. And I'm sure that when she reads your picture books, she feels that too. You know what I mean? And I love it. So let's move on to Chopsticks Are, which I just got this book a couple days ago. And I am, oh my gosh, I sat down with it and went through page by page. It's one thing to see the digital images, but it's another thing to see the finished book in your hands and flip through the pages, and you're just so happy when you see how it all came together and hold it in your hand. Anyway, what I love about Chopsticks Are is that it has all of these cultural touch points. And one of my, if anybody goes and reads what I'm looking for as an agent, I love things that bring us together as citizens of the world. Like that really just make us all feel like we're a family. Because I do think that while we do have a lot of differences, I think as humans we're similar. So let's talk about Chopsticks Are. This one is arriving from Chronicle in 2026. How did you approach taking a cultural touch point like chopsticks and make it both so specific and yet so universal?
So when I first wrote Chopsticks Are, I wrote it only from my own experience and information that I knew. So it was like focused solely on Japan / the Japanese American experience, because originally I didn't want to do a lot of the research, because I know that nonfiction takes so much time and energy. And I was like, if I try to make this expanded, I know this is going to take months and months of work to figure out all these details. So originally I had written it just from Japanese perspective, and I made it very specific to myself and to my family. And I do think that there is a part of when you make something so specific that it does feel very universal. Like when I wrote the book, the first spread is really from a moment in time. I was sitting at the kitchen table and was like, I need to write a book. And I was just like, what are my ideas here? And I was trying to just brainstorm ideas. And my mom and grandma were in the kitchen and they were cooking together. And they were using chopsticks to make eggs and frying Gothenburg. And just like that first line, chopsticks are, came to me. And I was like, oh, they're a tool, they're a utensil. And I think that, most kids know what it's like to sit and watch someone that they love cook. So that's a very relatable thing. And then to expand it and make it move beyond just my own experience. When this story went to acquisitions, one of the editors, Naomi, was like, what if we expanded this beyond Japan? I was like, oh, I had a feeling someone was going to ask me to do that. And not all the other editors didn't. She was actually the only one that suggested that. And as she explained it, I was like, oh, this is a really good idea. And I think I'm going to have to do it. And she showed me who she wanted to illustrate the book, Lynn. I got to see behind the scenes process or sketches for Lynn's book, Two New Years. And when I saw that with Richard Ho, and when I saw that, I was like, oh, this is so stunning. This feels like a really good fit. And so I said, okay, I'm going to try it. And so I did. I went to all of my friends and was like, so tell me, how do you use chopsticks? Because I know culturally it's not all the same. And so I went to my friends and I was asking them questions and just to get like a gathering of the initial data. And then from there, I started emailing people who worked at Asian art museums or different authors. I spoke to Asian chefs, and I just started collecting that information and diving really deep into the history of chopsticks, which was very time consuming. And then after that, I actually couldn't stop writing nonfiction. I went from, oh, I don't want to do nonfiction, it's so labor intensive, to I can't stop researching things. I can't stop wanting
It's
to write.
addictive. It's
Yeah.
addictive.
I just went down all these rabbit holes and was like, oh, this is great. And now I love nonfiction, which is so interesting because I was like, oh, I don't want to do something new. I want to do what I know. But it turns out it was actually really fun.
That's great.
So, when you're taking a look at your Chopsticks book, which it sounds delightful, and I need to know some of the ways that chopsticks are used that I don't know about. So, I'm going to be checking out your book. What kind of conversations do you want families to have about this, especially those that are not of an Asian culture?
One of the things when I was writing this book was I was really hoping that families would read it and see that there are distinct ways, distinct foods, distinct traditions, Asia with chopsticks. So I think sometimes people think that, everybody uses chopsticks the same, which is not true. And I've experienced this. A lot of people just assume all Asian people use chopsticks, all Asian countries use chopsticks, which is also not true. Certain Asian countries use their hands to eat, certain Asian countries rely more on forks and spoons. So as you read the story, you'll get to see like that we are different. Like we have a lot of things in common, but we are distinct. And also that chopsticks are not scary. I think a lot of people are intimidated by using chopsticks and they're just afraid to try. But no one is born like great at using chopsticks. Like no matter what, you have to practice. And there's even a spread in the book that sort of shows that. And even myself, like within my own family, we all hold our chopsticks a little bit differently. I am not an, I would say, expert at using chopsticks. Like I'm okay, but I'm still, someone in my family is probably going to say something. Be like, oh, like a little bit higher. People have their opinions. Yeah, yeah.
Hilarious.
They'll say, and that's in the author's note in the back. So if you read that,
Oh,
you'll
that's
see.
great.
Yeah, that, and it's funny. We almost have that conversation around New Year's every year when the family gathers around and everybody's holding their chopsticks, and we're just talking about how people hold their chopsticks differently because sometimes it depends on like the size of your hand or the size of your fingers or like what's comfortable for you. Like, we have a lot of conversations about chopsticks. But yeah, I don't want people to be afraid to use them. If you go to a restaurant, we're not judging you.
There's going to
That's
be a
good.
lot of kids. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of kids trying out their chopsticks now. You know that from this book. So that'll be awesome.
When I sold this book, I celebrated and I by going to a Chinese restaurant and I made myself use chopsticks for my entire meal.
I think
I
you
hope you
enjoy
didn't.
right. I think you enjoy the food more because if you don't know how to use them well, which is definitely me, like you, it slows you down. And I don't know.
It
I
does.
always feel like I'm enjoying my meal more because I'm more. I don't know. So how do you, Chloe, balance? And well, do you find it challenging to balance the authenticity and the accessibility for your readers?
Sometimes I have a habit, I think, of sometimes like leaning really lyrical, and that isn't always the most accessible. Like for example, I did All the Ways We Learn. I did that book with Rise Penguin Workshop, and their imprint is 0 to 5. And that is much younger than what I typically write for in my head. In my head, it's 4 to 8. And so I really had to change like the sentence structure than what I typically. With Chopsticks Are, that wasn't as big of a concern because the age group is a little bit older. But one thing I learned when I was working on Made for More, I was editing that with Ann Hop, and one of the things that she told me, and this is a paraphrase, but essentially what she said was that you can get away with, one vocabulary word or phrase that kids don't really understand per spread. And that way they can use the context clues to figure it out. But that has really helped me so that I know that I'm not like packing too much in there that's going to confuse the reader. So, yeah, that's just what I've been doing.
It's a great tip for anybody writing picture books.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Love it if we could talk a little bit about your writing process, the creative writing process, because I think other people would love to know some about like your drafting. And do you start with a theme or do you start with a character, an image? How do you really start your picture? Or is it different with everyone that you do?
It's different with every book that I write. So I typically start with a story idea, and then I sit down and I put onto paper whatever is coming out. So sometimes that's the first line, sometimes that's the ending, sometimes that's just some random scene in the middle. So I start wherever my brain takes me, and I can usually do about, I would say, maybe a spread or two a day for a first draft. But my process, I wouldn't say it's very replicable, nor would you maybe want to replicate it because it is a little chaotic. But I have a tendency, and Heather knows because my books are, they feel so random because I just write whatever I'm interested in. I write whatever I like, what I'm excited about. So I know a lot of people will ask about market trends, but I try not to pay attention to that. I just write what I'm excited about. Because I feel like if I'm so excited about this idea, the kids are going to be excited about this too.
Sure, that shows in all of your product, in your books and your production too.
Thank you.
Your enthusiasm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even just the books you've talked about, Chloe, like, at least to me, there does seem like there is a common theme in each of them. Like they are actionable empowerment and taking care of yourself, no matter what whether it's chopsticks or colorism. So I think it's probably working really well for you and you just don't even know.
So yeah, it is. It's interesting because to me, it's really not intentional in that sort of way. I think because I always put a piece of myself in the story, there always is like this common thread. And even when I sit down, like I sat down a couple years ago and I was like, I'm just going to write something funny to be funny. It's going to be silly. It's not going to mean anything. There's not going to be a lesson. It's just going to be a big old nothing burger for fun. And then I wrote it. I wrote, one day I'll come back to this. I put it to the side, but I wrote a story about, I think it was a pickle that thought they were a hot dog.
It says, I am not a pickle.
Yeah, I'm not a pickle. And it was
Yeah.
like,
I'll read.
yeah, and it was supposed to be just this
It is great.
silly story about this pickle that everyone's, you're a hot dog. The pickles, everybody's your pickle. And he said, no, I'm a hot dog. And then he's going through life and everybody's telling him that he's a pickle. And he's, no, I'm a hot dog. And it was just supposed to be like this funny random story. And then Heather was like, no, like this actually has some meaning to it. And I took a step back and I was like, oh my gosh, this story is really about identity and how how the world sees you and how they'll try to put you in the box, but they don't know your experiences. Like the only person that really knows who you are is you. And so the world doesn't get to tell you who you are. At the end, he decides that he's something else. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense to me because identity is really fluid. It's not something that is stagnant. And so it started as this random pickle book. And then I was like, wait, this actually is a thread that I have had my whole life because my whole life, based off the way that I look or the way that I talk, people have always told me who I am. Like, oh, you're not really Asian because you don't talk like someone who's Asian. Those sort of comments, I've always gotten those. And as a kid, you don't really know what to say to that. It wasn't until I was an adult that I have come to realize what I should have said, which is, you're not Asian. Like, how do you know what it means to be Asian? Like, you don't know my experience. You don't know my life. So even the stories that I think don't have a thread or a meaning, somehow it always like subconsciously makes its way in there.
And I think the pickle book needs to come back out because I think you've got the theme and it sounds wonderful. So pull that back out.
So Chloe, you're like the pickle book, right? So there's this like strong emotional core to this humorous story. So on any of your books, how do you keep them from feeling didactic?
Sure. I think as picture book writers, we often will pick themes that do lend themselves to becoming didactic. And for me is I just write it and then I'll go back and change it later. So sometimes when I write something, it comes out and it is super didactic and I'll just put in parentheses like change this or fix this later. But I think the thing that has really helped me with that is you're going to say what you want to say. This is going to be confusing. You're going to say what you want to say, but you're not going to come out and say it directly. So, like in Made for More, I didn't say like colorism is bad, but I said that in a different way, right? So that it wasn't like as direct. And I do that with all my stories. Like Chopsticks Are is all about tradition and family. And, in the story, it doesn't say chopsticks are all about traditions and families. And we like chopsticks. Chopsticks are great. But it does say that, like just in a very more eloquent and lyrical way. So you have to have this idea of where you want the story to go and be able to say it in a way that kids can relate to it and isn't quite so heavy handed. So it's definitely an art. It's definitely something that I'm always working on. I know with my critique partners, they are too. I think a lot of the time you just, especially with that first draft, you just get it out. And sometimes it's not good. And that's okay because you can fix it.
I think
Good
too,
advice.
one of the things I've noticed with your books is that instead of telling us how you feel, you show it, right? So like in Made for More, she is experiencing this pressure, right? And someone's telling her to do something, but she goes and does something else. She shows that she wants this other thing and that she's going to go get it and why it's important to her. And I think if you take whatever feelings that you're having that make it sound didactic and you turn that into a way that a small child could show the same action, then that can maybe solve that problem a little bit. I don't know. That's what I see in your books.
Are we ready for the lightning round?
I think so.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Okay. So, Chloe, this is super fast. You just answer with the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
So, what is one children's book that you return to for inspiration?
Watercress.
Sure.
Nice.
That is a great choice.
Yeah.
Favorite writing snack?
Ooh, goldfish and M&Ms.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a
Sweet and
snacker.
salty. What's the hardest part of writing picture books in 3 words?
I'm a perfectionist. I have a
That
hard
is-
time letting things go and be like
That's
final.
funny.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. If you weren't writing, you would be.
My dream as a child was to be a librarian. And I actually went to school and wanted to do library science, but it was at a time when they were like, librarians are being fired, like schools are cutting the funding for that. This isn't really a viable career choice. I didn't get to do that. But so maybe if I wasn't a writer, I would be a librarian or work at a bookstore.
Chloe, thank you so much for being with us and sharing your experiences.
You're
And
welcome.
make
Thanks
sure
for
that-
having me.
And we make sure that we can find Chloe online at chloeitoward, correct? .com.
Yeah.
Make sure to check out Made for More from HarperCollins and keep an eye out for Chopsticks Are with Chronicle and All the Ways We Learn from Penguin Rise coming out this year.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Wayward Writers.
Let's connect. Find us at waywardwriters.com, X, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
See you next time. Conquer your path.